I came across this video, I think yesterday, and it's called Joe Rogan, I Can't Believe What's Happening to Jordan Peterson. And then I came up with other stuff that apparently is about Jordan Peterson potentially losing his license to practice big brain. He has it here. He has a little bit of a Google Drive document. I read through it a little bit. Seems kind of silly. I'm assuming that they're related. If they're not, then this will be, it'll be a little messy. Let's go.
Jordan was ringing the alarm for this a long time ago, and I'm sure you're aware of what's happening to him now.
What alarm for what?
I am aware that something new is happening to him in the last couple of days, but I have not caught up to it.
He's getting in trouble.
Oh, this is by a content creator named Volotavaholic. I think this is the person's name. Okay, I thought it was like a Joe Rogan clip channel. Let's continue.
This is the most important part about it, is that Jordan has achieved escape velocity, and he doesn't need them anymore. And so this is an empty threat. So this removing his license, you're not going to take.
Hey, it is about the same thing. Hey, good assumption. Let's pretend that I knew that the whole time, guys.
His education, his degrees. If you say you're removing his license, well, I don't think he's seeing clients anymore. He's not really acting as a clinical psychologist anymore, is he?
Probably not. It's still kind of cool to keep it. We'll read through a little bit of the document. It's a lot, so we're not going to read through the whole thing, but we'll do that after this.
The legacy media types they're done. They're so done. It's happened so fast. I notice among young people that the legacy media, the big magazines, the newspapers, the TV stations, the radio stations for that matter, all of whom had a monopoly on this kind of information flow, are so dead to people under 30 that it's as if their death isn't even noticed.
Yeah, it's not good. And it's not good, and it's the media company's fault, right? So we've had pretty much like pretty big prevailing media companies for a long time. You got your CNNs, your Fox Newses, your MSNBCs, or all that other nonsense. And realistically, they're, for the most part, held to higher standards when it comes to their reporting of news than any offline journalist that exists. The problem is that they run insane fucking narratives so often, and they'll give you information in such a deceiving way that's technically true by like lawyer speak, but you have to like read between the lines, but that people are just losing their patience with them, and they're starting to turn to alternative media. There's now people who will trust Instagram memes more than they trust like CNN. And it's funny that I don't think CNN realizes that that's their fault. That's their own fault. You know what I mean? Same thing with Fox News. They think it's like, well, technically we report the facts. You know, we put them into you maybe out of context. But you know how we talk about dog whistles, like conservative dog whistles, where, you know, somebody like Tucker Carlson will say, Tucker Carlson will say something like, we need to preserve American culture. We can't let all these immigrants in. And like to a normal person, that sounds like they're saying like, yeah, let's monitor illegal immigration. And then to like, you know, extremists, that might signal to them that we need to get all black people out of the United States. You know what I mean? That's what that is, like, kind of like they'll say something that is interpreted different ways to different people, and it's like lawyer speak. Yeah, that's how it comes off to me. What's going on, brother? How you doing?
And that's fascinating. And I've also been trying to figure out what I'm doing with the podcasts themselves, because that's really what I've been doing a lot of for the last 4 months. And I listened to this. I was interviewed by a Wall Street journalist last week, and I asked him what he liked about podcasts, because he listened to them a lot, and he said, I really like to see where they're going. And I thought,
well, I also think podcasts are interesting for a lot of people because there's like a parasocial aspect. Not even that. I don't even want to use that word. I feel like that's like such an overused word. There's like an aspect of it's almost like you know the person a little bit more. You know, the person a little bit more. You know, you get to build with them, like you were saying. You get to see where they're going, but you get to kind of like, come on, you get to know the person. And in my case, like we're kind of watching content together. I'm giving you my reaction. It's like your old grandpa screaming at the TV. And only, you know, we're watching a 2-hour movie, but it's taking us 4 hours, you know. People enjoy that. And more and more people enjoy that over like traditional TV. So,
but yeah, that's exactly it. Because in a legacy media interview, everything is scripted and you're never talking to a person. You're talking to the corporation, essentially. And I'm not being cynical about that. It had to be that way because bandwidth was so expensive. But,
well, not just that, though, but nowadays it feels like there's a lot of people who aren't willing to give their honest perspective. I don't respect people who say inflammatory things like Andrew Tate, but I can respect people who speak their mind, like someone like Joe Rogan. Even if he may get something wrong or say something ignorant, it's not because he's trying to be wrong or ignorant. It's just because, like, you make a mistake like everybody else. And I can appreciate that. Like just somebody kind of like, yeah, cycling through their thoughts live. Sometimes you fuck up and you're like, hey, guys, I fucked up, and it is what it is. you know. But that's the TV isn't like that. And then there are some narratives, mainstream narratives, that people feel like they can't question at all, so they won't say anything against it. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Now you can sit down with someone and you can risk exploration. Of course, that's what Joe Rogan has been doing so well for so many years. You can risk exploration. You can have two people having a genuine discussion about a complex issue, and so they're engaging in dialectical thinking, and if they're good at it, they're modeling it, so they can model high quality dialectical thinking and pull people along on an exploratory journey and make it permanent. And that's completely revolutionary. That's never been possible before, and the possibilities are limitless. And then, sorry, I'm going to rant about this a bit because I am so continually staggered by this. The next thing is you can take those conversations and you can chop them up into 30-second pieces, minute-long pieces, 5-minute-long pieces, 20-minute-long pieces, and each of those can find a specialized home that can attract millions of views.
That's true. You absolutely can do that, you know? It sounds interesting when he's basically just talking about somebody who makes like a podcast and then they just section it off and put it up on social media, and then they section off additionally for shorts type content and they put that on social media. But when he says it like this, it sounds so much different. There's people who may want to watch the full thing, and there might be people who just want to watch a bit of that thing or part of that thing, and then there's some people who really get off to watching, or get off is a weird word to say, to like 30 seconds of that thing. That's the scariest part, though, isn't it? The 30 seconds to the minute clips, right? Those are the out of context clips. I think that segment, like full blown podcast and segments where you're talking about a particular topic and fleshing it out for 10, 20, 30 minutes is really cool. When you break it down to like 10, 15, 20 seconds, even a minute, you kind of run the risk of not showing a full story in a way that for some people can inspire them to go find the main thing. But for other people, it can cause them to create a narrative that might be like really shitty. That wasn't even the intention of the creator, or it allows the creator to create a very dishonest portrayal of what's going on in like a conversation, especially if they don't like the person. They call that like clip culture, clip chimping. I think that they call it. They talk that. So, I think that's what they say. Call it. Jesus Christ!
It's as if you could write a book and sell it by the sentence. It's really something, and I can tell perfectly well when a podcast discussion is going well, and it's a dance. Right? I mean, there has to be this continual reciprocity, and that requires you to attend very carefully to your guest and to listen. I have some trouble with not interrupting because for a variety of reasons, but some of that's the technological lag produced by Zoom and Skype. It makes you.
I have the same problem. People notice that I pause a lot. And some people they're fine with it. Some people enjoy it. Some people hate it. Probably a lot of people hate it. But for me, I pause a lot because I'll forget what I want to say in the exact moment. I might have something to do with my ADHD. I don't really know. But sometimes I feel like I just need to get a thought out, boom, instantaneously, you know? And that's why sometimes I do that. In conversations, I try to monitor myself a little bit better. Like when I was talking to Ryan Beard yesterday, I was like, there's things I wanted to say, but it's like I'm talking to a person. So, of course, you want to maintain your level of respect. But sometimes I just feel like I need to pause.
A little less, the dance is a little more awkward because the timing is off. But it's really fun when it works. And it's working much of the time when I'm talking to my guests. It's really exciting. I have all sorts of people lined up. I'm so excited about it. I think that if
line me up, Jordan.
2 hours you reveal your hand.
Line me up.
And everyone can see it. You reveal the weaknesses and strengths of your argument. You reveal the weaknesses and strengths of your character. But in some sense, you can, even if your character is flawed, like all of our characters are, if you're engaged in something genuine, in a genuine move forward, you're forgiven for that. Right? If you're actively rectifying your evident flaws during the discussion, people will forgive you for your flaws. But YouTube and podcast long form seems absolutely unforgiving of any falsity, as far as I can tell.
Interesting.
YouTube and podcast long form seems absolutely unforgiving of any falsity, as far as I can tell. I mean, sometimes we do.
I mean, speaking to cancel culture, I believe where people, it is very bizarre. People, they think I was talking to Ryan again yesterday about this, and my thing is that there are people who are so hateful to anybody who makes a mistake, and I think that comes from a place of just non self-awareness. I think, and I was there too, where people just float through their lives. Like when I used to work at the bus company, when I would do the whole bus cleaning thing, I was just kind of, there are times where you just zone out. Your body takes over. You're not doing anything wrong, but when you have a job that's, somewhat repetitive, or you're really good at it, even if it's not repetitive, you start to just kind of go with the motions. You know what I mean? You can't take your order, putting away groceries on the shelf, cleaning a bus off, blah, 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 driving the same pattern. And I don't think people are aware of the constant mistakes that they make even in their real lives. I remember working, and sometimes you just make little mistakes. They're annoying, but you probably don't even realize them because other people aren't really going to call you on them because like it's not that big of a deal. But then sometimes you'll like hash it out. But it's in the real world, we make mistakes like every day, minor mistakes, and then when it's on the internet, people will make very small mistakes sometimes too, and they'll get completely shot down or shit on. There's no accurate accountability. Like nobody prescribes what should this person have to do for this punishment. It's always just like fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you.
Do some editing. There's two conditions under which we'll edit. One is just to edit out some technical glitch. We also allow our guests the option of not having something they said broadcast if they believe they've made a factual error or addressed an argument in a misleading way. And that's a little bit more of a moral quagmire. But our thought is that if we allow people that veto power to begin with, they're much more likely to be loose and to take risks in the exploration. That's
actually very smart. That's a good point. Because when he first said that, they did this offline podcast and then they allowed them to remove some segments in case they feel like they misspoke. That sounds like weird because you should stick to your guns. But at the same time, some people just miscommunicated an argument. And there's something really interesting about giving people the opportunity to take risks. That's very cool. It's a very positive thing. If you don't let people take risks in anything, they don't tend to perform very well because they just kind of sit back and they stay sheltered and they sit in their little box. But if you give somebody the opportunity to take a bit of a risk without shitting on them, all of a sudden they're much more open to exploring themselves a lot better. This can be applied to literally anything. It can be applied to even just video games, So.
And we've had to cut virtually nothing except I think 2 factual errors of a few seconds. But it's so interesting because in the comment section, if we ever edit anything, there's skepticism right away. And so that's another indication of how unforgiving the medium is with regards to falsity. I'm trying to get politicians on my podcast. Senator Mike Lee, who's probably the most conservative senator in the United States. I'm releasing a podcast with him this weekend, and I think he acquitted himself well. And I'm hoping that I've been in contact with a large number of Democrats. And I'm hoping that they'll take the big leap because they can talk directly to their constituents. They can talk directly to the people who they're responsible to with no intermediation of bureaucracy, if they dare. Because like I said, I think you can make mistakes, but if you're bargaining in good faith, the audience will forgive you for your mistakes.
Hey, what's up, Lydia?
So,
Linda.
but
Linda, why do I keep saying Lydia? I'm a fucking idiot. What's going on, Linda? How you doing?
Punished brutally if you're false. So, and I don't know about you, but I'm really attentive to the comments. I watch how people are responding. And, if 10 people point out something, I'm still working on this proclivity to interrupt, but if 10 people point out something, I try to address it. My team tries to address it because, well, why not? You're probably doing something wrong at some point. If enough people tell you, it's tricky.
It is very tricky because that's the most, probably one of the most difficult parts of being on social media is when you either make a mistake or something people perceive as a mistake. There tends to be a disproportionate energy of criticism almost always from somebody. It can be very difficult to sift through the legitimate criticism versus the false criticism. And that's why some content creators just get into this habit of just being like, I'm never wrong, fuck that and shit like that, because they get such disproportionate criticism. They'll get a criticism for, how loud their fart is. And then the next day they'll get a criticism for, them hitting somebody. And I know that sounds weird, but then they're like, well, which one? I don't know. Both of the criticism had the same proportionality. Did I really do anything wrong now? And it kind of goes into that direction with that. All right. So this is just some TikTok I saw. I haven't watched it. Somebody sent it to me. That's why, I didn't see it. So I saw it in my Discord. And they said, I'm gonna watch it. It's part of Jordan Peterson.
Ontario College of Psychologists has told Jordan Peterson.
So Pierre probably
maybe we should watch this full thing then.
So the Ontario College of Psychologists has told Jordan Peterson that he either undergo retraining for social media.
This is me walking to the kitchen to get food, the breathing.
Etiquette, or lose his license to practice as a clinical.
How do you differentiate real criticism from pedantic criticism? You need somebody to ground you in the real world. My wife is frankly the person that grounds me, the person I talk to about this stuff, and she helps me kind of navigate that.
Psychologist. This follows a number of complaints by people who don't like his online posts. One of which is a retweet of something I posted. Another is a criticism of Justin Trudeau. Now, it should go without saying that in a free country, Professionals should not lose their jobs and licenses because they express a political opinion contrary to the licensing body that's...
So my understanding, because I don't know if this is necessarily the most accurate portrayal, because I have there's a bit of a document here. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing. It's 56 pages long. I've already kind of like read it, like kind of shifted through it. This is from Jordan Peterson himself. This is from the College of Psychologists, and it says, to whom it may concern, it is against every ethical standard and the best practice of the U.S. National Association of Social Workers Code of Ethics to make light of, encourage, joke about, or reference the topic of suicide in a manner that is not grounded in safety, prevention, and evidence-based therapeutic intervention. I am sure that Canada's standards of professional psychology social work are similar. I am submitting a formal complaint not only for Jordan Peterson's original tweet, but the fact that he just shared it again, promoting the idea that what he said was perfectly fine. So apparently this is the tweet. I disagree. Based off the record of human behavior, we already overpopulate this small world. Any arguments I have heard for supporting such a large human population completely overlook the huge loss of species and ecosystems resulting from our self-absorbed attention. And Jordan says you're free to leave at any point. Which is a joke about, taking a slide down the sewer, which is where you meet the Ninja Turtles, but only in the brief moments because your life flashes before your eyes. Don't do that. Don't do that. But that's what I think this whole thing is kind of centralizing around is I guess this bit of this joke, or offhanded remark about. And frankly, I don't know why Jordan is defending this tweet, because I'd be like, yeah, I could see why, as a professional, he'd be held to this higher standard. But okay.
It's mandated by the government. But, of course, in saying this, my liberal critics in the media will, of course, say, well, Poilievre agrees with freedom of speech for someone like Dr. Peterson, therefore he must endorse everything Dr. Peterson has ever said. Well, of course not. I don't endorse 100% of everything anyone has ever said. There's no two people in the world who agree 100% of the time on 100% of things. And so I'm sure there is something he's posted that I do object to, but that is not the point, because freedom of speech only matters when you disagree. I mean, if we all agreed, we wouldn't need freedom of speech, because no one has ever tried to censor someone for saying something that they agree with. It is only when there is a disagreement that it matters. And that's what distinguishes Canada, a free country, from...
And there's other tweets in this page that are like about COVID and stuff. It seems to be some relatively harmless stuff or difference in political perspective. So
dictatorships.
Of course, I'll link it.
Dictators don't censor things their citizens say that the dictator agrees with, only things they disagree with. Here in Canada, though, unfortunately, through the cancel culture and the woke movement we've seen at university campuses, in the
I
media,
can't even do that in the morning.
Now increasingly in big, powerful corporations, and most recently,
music is very intense.
With a professional licensing body, we're seeing the idea that someone can lose their job, their status, their ability to study because they express something that is contrary to the government line. Now, I don't believe that is the Canada we want. We have Section 2B of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. To be or not to be, that is the question. And the answer is...
The most cringe thing ever.
that, as Voltaire has been quoted as saying, I may not agree with what you say, but I will defend to my death your right to say it.
I will say the fact that he didn't get too into the specifics is a little, maybe not fully honest. But let's see.
Poilievre seems to be all up in a tizzy that Jordan Peterson is about to lose his psychologist's license. But why don't we go over why he's going to lose his license?
Is it because your audio is slightly off tilt?
First things first, he was making jokes about people unaliving themselves, not really something that a psychologist should be doing. He was also making comments about how...
Well, you should show the tweet in an easier way for us to see it.
Something that a psychologist...
He didn't... this is the problem that I don't... This is kind of the problem I have right off the bat, is he didn't show the tweet. I showed the tweet. I feel like you should. I mean, if you have it on the screen, you might as well show it, right? I mean,
just should be doing. He was also making comments about how children's aid shouldn't have gotten involved in the Freedom Convoy, even though psychologists have to report when a child is in need of protection. And Peterson's tweets would have undermined public trust.
Speech from Peterson during the Freedom Convoy when he what What does it say? Open to children's aid. Didn't need to get involved. Report when a child is in need of protection of the copyright others. Okay, interesting.
Also, his Joe Rogan appearances are going to be investigated, mainly for sharing fake info, because Jordan Peterson is undermining his profession by pontificating on areas well outside of his area of competence. This doesn't even get into all the stuff he's been saying about climate change.
Is that part of like the social work standard or whatever clinical psychologist standard that you can't talk about things outside of your wheelhouse publicly? That seems a little silly.
And we haven't even scratched the surface on his anti-trans rhetoric and him misgendering a city councillor in Ottawa, calling Catherine McKinney a thing. Then there were his comments on plus-size swimsuit models, which are dangerous for a psychologist to say, given the prevalence of eating disorders in Canada. And then
I don't know, bro. Listen, maybe I'm just wrong. I feel like some of this is like a little pearl clutchy, but I mean, if it really, I mean, I'm not a fucking psychologist, so I guess I don't know. Maybe these could be a bigger deal than I think, but I feel like some of this is kind of silly. Like he can't say I don't like fat girls. You know, I disagree with them because fat girls are hot, but like. Is that really something that would be a contributing factor to him losing his platform? Or are they just collecting as much stuff as possible now to kind of like throw into the mix? And it's like, here's the actual bad thing, the whole, suicide joke. But then like, hey, he doesn't like fat girls. It's like, and then what happens? We get him on all those things. And people are like, well, they got rid of him because he doesn't like fat chicks. And then people are like, oh, what the fuck? You know? I don't know.
There's all of his COVID denial stuff, which just like climate change is so much that I really can't go into it right now. And now, mind you, Jordan Peterson posted this information himself to Twitter. And after Rachel Gilmore and other journalists started to investigate, he deleted it. It's almost as if he realizes that he's actually in the wrong here. And so now let's just circle this all back to Pierre Poilievre, shall we? You know, the guy who was using hidden misogynistic hashtags in his YouTube videos? The guy who is always running to the defense of Jordan Peterson. And then he wonders why he is so unpopular with women. Pierre, maybe you should be looking at the company you keep and who you get your advice from. I wonder if we can get him to say his opinions on Andrew Tate.
Okay, cool. Well, that's that. Listen, personally, some of the stuff seems to be a little silly, but I'm also not the clinical psychologist board of Canadian Restitution Services of America. I don't know. I'm not part of the Canadian board of whatever. So I guess they'll decide, man. Either way, I don't think it matters because Jordan doesn't even really practice anymore, I don't think. He mostly is like a podcaster, so.
I want Papa Gut to pee on my face, but just as a friend. There's nothing weird about that. I want him to pee on my face.